And well, today we have a very fascinating guest who's going to talk about relationships. We're going to hear more shortly. So psychotherapist and relationship expert Lucy Beresford. Welcome to the show. Great to have you on board.
Thank you.
So Lucy, sort of reading some of the research around relationships and designing your own relationship. Tell us about a little bit about what's changing in the world today, or has it always been the case, or what's your take on monogamy being the gold standard of relationships?
Well, there's been some very interesting research from Ashley Madison, the married dating website people, and they have been talking a lot about whether monogamy is an outdated model for the last few years now, actually, pre-pandemic. And I think the research that's come out in this month is really interesting in that it shows that more people are interested in exploring whether the idea of monogamy has sort of passed its sell-by date for them individually, and certainly a very high percentage, over 75% of people that they surveyed, felt that it would be possible nowadays to be non-monogamous and for that to not lead to a divorce, for example, or for trauma. And I think what this speaks to is the way in which people are interested in exploring things. They're interested in being perhaps a bit more fluid, talking to their partner about incorporating maybe a different person into the relationship. And for that, you'd have really interesting conversations and perhaps even to draw up a contract around it, a couple's contract, as we would call it, in order to make sure that any developments into non-monogamy were really safe and respectful and didn't cause disappointment in the end.
And I mean, like in terms of, say, society, like traditions, I mean, how would that sort of, do you think that would be potentially a sort of conflict against sort of traditions that we have in society?
Well, it depends really what your view is on how marriage has come about, because for many centuries, marriage seemed to be unions of families. They might be very commercially driven. Farming communities uniting with other farmers to build up a bank of land. It wasn't about romance. It wasn't about love. That became a sort of mid-century, or Middle Ages rather, concept. Which we rather embraced. I mean, the idea of love and partnership. We were always very intrigued with animals in the animal kingdom who seem to mate for life. But I think what's been happening recently in terms of human behaviour is people are saying, is this relationship working for me? Is this model of till death do us part, when death might not come until I'm 120, can I imagine being with the same person for 95 years? These are questions that people are quite legitimately asking themselves, and in many cases they're saying, well, actually it doesn't really work for me. Particularly women. What Ashley Madison have found in another study that they've done is that women are increasingly having taken control of their work life and fighting for better pay, fighting for equality in the workplace, smashing those glass ceilings and sticky floors. Women are also looking at fulfillment in their relationships, and I think is increasingly common is women dictating what they would like to see.
I mean, you mentioned that it's like a contract type thing. I mean, what would that you sort of touched on what it would sort of consist of, but how would that sort of work? So you sort of, you sit down with someone and you kind of, talk about what would it consist of? How would you sort of implement the contract? What are some of the things you'd have to...
First of all, I think you'd pay attention to your own feelings, and you would sit with those for a while to see whether this is really something that you want to introduce into your relationship. I don't think it's something that you sort of read about or hear about on the radio and then just go lunging or blazing. But you think about it in your own situation and what would work. And then my suggestion is that you ask your partner to have a conversation, prepare it in such a way as to say, I've been thinking about the many lovely things about our relationship and how I care about you, and I've got this idea, and I was wondering what you would think about it. And that gives your partner the idea that, you're talking about the relationship, you're not about to dump them. And then you can start a series of conversations. Again, before you get to the contract, you've got to really make sure that your partner is on the same page as you. You've got to give them time. You've got to listen to their feelings, and if they've got any queries or objections, to work it through. Only when you really feel that the two of you are on the same page and really enthusiastic about going forward, that's when you start to think about drawing up a contract. And I'm not talking about going to a lawyer here. This isn't legal fees. It's about the two of you design, in the same way as people nowadays often design their own wedding vows or commitment vows. This is about designing a document that really pays attention to all sorts of areas, like are we just going to introduce this other person just for sex? Is it about a deeper emotional connection? How many times a week will we see that person? Do we tell our children? What do we do if we get a bit jealous? And all those sorts of things. And you draw up the contract because the two of you want to include all of this information. And actually on the Ashley Madison website, we've got, a document about this so that people can think more broadly about the things that they want to incorporate into that.
So, I sort of, from speaking to you, there's a lot to take into consideration in terms of, but I suppose, let's say if would it be easier, do you think, if people sort of were going into a relationship knowing that's what they wanted, or could this be also the case if people are in a relationship or been in a relationship for a long time and are kind of thinking to be, to sort of meet new people? I know sort of outside the scope of the research, but do you think that if someone went into a relationship with the expectation it was going to be non-monogamous, would it be easy to think that so if someone is in a relationship for a long time and they decide that, that's what they want to do?
I'm not sure I understand your question. There are people who go into relationships completely committed to thinking that it is just going to be the two of them, but our desires often change over time.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
That actually, a lot of things can happen between meeting someone when you're in your late 20s and getting to your 40s or 50s or 60s or 70s. You're different people. You might have had kids together. The kids might have left home. Your parents might have died. You changed your career. All sorts of things. And in the same way as your life, your kind of outside the bedroom life might have changed, then your passions and your interests and your curiosity will have changed. And I think this is just an acknowledgement that in all relationships, change is the one constant in life, and it's about embracing that, really, in a way that works for both parties.
Yeah, I noticed the research said by opening relationship up, it said that 50% in the research said there would be less pressure on the partner to feel the needs of a spouse. I'm looking at the sort of the research. Like in terms of that, does that sort of scope? What sort of scope? When is that just sort of? In what sort of areas might someone feel sort of pressure in terms of? Is that also emotional support, or you mentioned it's not just obviously in the bedroom. It could be other things too that sort of people feel. Do you have any insights in terms of that? Like what? Someone else.
Yes, I think what that really is about is this idea that if you look to your partner to be absolutely everything to you, and sometimes that dream is sold as this, mythical soulmate that will provide not just financial support, not just sexual intimacy, not just careers advice, looking after you when you're unwell, taking out the bins, being the person who loves the same movies as you. There's a lot of pressure on one person, and it doesn't really bring any extra energy. It's why we have friends at the football club. It's why we maybe join a book club or a cookery class, or we hang out with our colleagues. It's because we're group creatures and we need to get nourishment from lots of different ways. And for some people, that can become quite pressurized, that you feel, it's all down to this one person. So yes, some people who prefer non-monogamy would say this gives the perfect opportunity for people to say, I'm going to have other things in the life.
Absolutely. And I suppose, like, if someone was to get married, say, let's ballpark age, say mid-20s, there's the other side to it too. I mean, people are living, the average age, I think last time I checked was probably 80, so it's a long time to be. I mean, I didn't sort of see anything in the research, but I was wondering, like, is boredom a factor for people sort of being the same person?
Is what, sorry?
Is boredom a factor, being with the same person for, like, many, many years? Is that a factor for people being,
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think we must underestimate that at all. It's very, very important to recognise that boredom, habit, routine, the very things that people actually often crave when they start a relationship. They want to have that continuity. They want to just be able to, veg out on the sofa together night after night. But unfortunately, at the same time, the danger of that habit-forming groove is boredom.
Absolutely.
That you're not being seen or validated. That can be quite a danger. Absolutely.
So I guess in a sense, for some people, not saying for everybody, but for some people, there's a chance that sort of by looking at different options, they might have a stronger relationship if that's what they want to do as well. So that might sort
absolutely. And certainly what the research from Ashley Madison shows is that a lot of people believe that it would actually prevent divorce because it would mean that people could show up in their primary relationship fulfilled, unresentful. It would just work.
Absolutely. And if people want to see more information or sort of like your information, Lucy, is there anywhere they can go to sort of like check the work you do out, or do you have any sort of details they can have a look?
Oh yes, go to both the Ashley Madison website and also my website, lucyberesford.com.
Okay, thanks for your time, Lucy. It's been really interesting speaking to you. So that was Lucy Beresford, psychotherapist and relationship expert, giving us a different take on relationships on Salford City Radio 94.4 FM, the Friday Sports. Your host, Jimmy Petruzzi. Thanks for your time, Lucy. That was a good interview. Thanks for that.
Thank you.